MeMonster.
Chapter 226. T was unfortunate, but we could not see Yarina's coronation ceremony. In the first place, Empress Primel did not immediately step down from the throne, but took her time to give Yarina a proper transition time. It would take at least 1 to 3 years before Yarina ascended, and since UC Autumn couldn't accelerate time anymore, he thought that there was no reason to stay here any longer. Are you really leaving Guardian Nem? Yeah. Yarina lowered her head at his words. She wanted to show UC Autumn the moment when she became the Empress, so it saddened her quite a bit. As you know, I am not a person who likes to stay in one place for long. This is the first time I've ever spent a long time with someone. They had spent nearly 5 years together. Of course, most of the time was shortened because UC Autumn used the probability to accelerate time. Nevertheless, he had a lot of memories with Yarina, so he also felt slight regret in leaving her behind. However, just because memories had accumulated, he couldn't simply decide to stay in this world for longer. After all, his original purpose of coming to this world was to strengthen himself to raid the Hell Gate. Can we meet again next time? Guardian Nim Yarina asked carefully. No, it'll go somewhere you can't go to. Even as the Empress, it will be impossible for you to come to where I would be. UC Autumn shook his head. Unless she's a magic addict whose daily routine only consists of eating and researching magic, like a certain someone. Still, if there is an opportunity someday, I really want to see you again. At that time, I will show you that I have become a true Empress. Promise of a reunion should not be taken lightly. After all, UC Autumn had never been to the same dimension more than once. However, in front of the pleading Yarina, UC Autumn couldn't just say that it was impossible, and after pondering for several seconds, he opened his mouth. Okay, let's meet again someday. After saying that, UC Autumn turned away from Yarina, followed by Kelly. Both of them left the Primel Imperial Castle, walked for a long time, and eventually left the Primel City. It's easier not to hold on to it any longer. Is that so? Yes, I'm used to those obsessions and regrets because I've seen them a lot. Where did you see it? Just here and there. Kelly looked at UC Autumn at that moment, but he was already doing something else. You have hunted a level 199 protagonist. 1990 days of lifespan has been paid. Your level has been raised by 3. You have completed a long-term project hunting as you slowly and painstakingly hunted the protagonists, absorbing a lot of the protagonist's probability in the process. Your level has been raised by an additional 2. You have obtained Muscle Tightening A rank skill. It really took a long time for UC Autumn to reach this level, and thanks to absorbing a significant part of the probability, the level went up by a whopping 5 steps. In other words, congratulations, you have reached level 200. You have once again broken through the limits of human beings. Ability can now exceed the limit. UC Autumn. Level 200. Stats. Strength 203. Stamina 205. Agility 201. Energy 1. Mana 373. Talent. Vitality SSS rank. Shooting S+ rank. Swordsmanship S rank. Intuition A rank. Quick-wit A rank. Insight B rank. Focus C rank. Hunting D+ rank. Cooking D- rank and others. Skills. Protagonist Hunter level 5. Double Circle SSS rank. Aura Sunyoung Mana Circling Technique SSS rank. Dharma Heavenly Wind God Technique SSS rank. Concentration SS rank. White Swordsmanship S rank. Inventory S rank. How to Understand the Machine Emotionally A rank. Muscle Tightening A rank. Sixth Sense B rank. Looking at All Things with a Cold Gaze B rank. Library of the White Witch B rank. Holy Conversion F rank. The effect level 200 brought to UC Autumn's body was much more intense than the effect of level 150. Normally, all stats could never be higher than a certain level. However, the moment someone reached level 200, the stats could exceed the level and all possibilities were infinitely opened. On top of it, even talents and skills grew. Skills could grow as long as they were trained, but it was impossible to raise talent that way. However, by throwing away the frame of being human, UC Autumn broke past the limit. In addition, all the talents and skills that are related to sense were combined to become a single talent, Quick-wit A rank. UC Autumn clenched his fist and felt the mana running through his body. Previously, he had been able to relatively move the mana inside his body freely. However, now he could feel the mana was flowing endlessly inside. Even though there was only a 5-level difference, the difference was akin to land and sky. He could feel that his body was much lighter and healthier. He also felt as if from this moment he is unbeatable. Even so, at the thought that he was barely on the same level as Taylor 9, UC Autumn was able to calm down once again. On top of it, as he thought that Seol Jungyun was at level 350 and Eric Kelly, who had a record of achieving level 500 in the past, he gained his composure back. After all, compared to them, he was still a long way off. Still, this is enough for the Hell Gate raid. Now all that remains is to really return to Earth and prepare to enter the Hell Gate. Eric Kelly, when I return to Earth this time, I think I will take a break from this work for a while. Is that so? Yeah, by the way, since you already learned the double circle, is it still impossible for you to move to Earth? At his words, Eric Kelly closed her eyes and sensed the energy of the dimension. Yes, it's still impossible. If the distance to Vivienda from here is 1 step, the distance to Earth is almost 10 steps. It's too far. Oh, should we try again after moving to a different dimension? No, that's not what it means. How then? Arisley said slowly with a look that seemed a little cryptic. Earth is so far away. I can go to most other dimensions with my current strength if I dedicate 1 year of my age to it, but it's still impossible to go to Earth with just this much. It's away all alone as if it was isolated from other dimensions. What does that supposed to mean? UC Autumn was puzzled. In the first place, he could not understand Eric Kelly's words properly because he had never felt the dimension with his own senses. In Eric Kelly's case, her dimensional sense was already beyond human awareness, so it was possible for her to properly describe it. Only the Earth is far apart. Is there any reason? Just as UC Autumn was about to think about it, Eric Kelly's expression softened slightly and then slowly hardened. What's the matter? Something is strange. There is an aura that should no longer be felt at Vivienda. What did the demons return? No, that's not it. It's like... She closed her eyes with her fidgety look and felt her own hometown in the distance. In the process, she had to consume all the mana she had accumulated so far, the mana of 3 double circles and the mana that she received from UC Autumn. Thanks to that, she was able to find an answer. However, it was by no means a good result. Visit Read Light Novel Me for extra chapters. Eric Kelly, who opened her eyes again, looked at UC Autumn with darting eyes. It was due to the fact that the aura she felt at her hometown was the very same aura she had seen and felt countless times as she traveled together with him. It was also the aura that drove her child self into a wretched abyss. It is probability. What does that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. It's more apt to say that it's impossible to happen. Why did a protagonist appear again in a world where the protagonist had died? Think about it, a 2-part series or a side story series. There is something like that, isn't it? As long as the protagonist dies, the value of the worldview disappears. It's like a series we talked about previously. At that state, it was unlikely that the protagonist would appear again. I have a strong feeling that someone deliberately brought them back. But who? That I don't know. The more UC Autumn thought about it, the more his head hurt. Meanwhile, Eric Kelly was still looking at UC Autumn with anxious eyes. Rebirth of the protagonist. That means, in the end, the world will continue to head towards destruction. Eric Kelly knows that fact very well. She is also aware that no matter what kind of beings come and no matter how weak those beings are, she will never be able to defeat the existence called protagonist. But does that mean she has to watch her hometown perish? She didn't want to. But the only existence that could hunt the main character was UC Autumn, her professor. However, the professor just said that he will stop hunting protagonists for the time being. What are you doing? We have to go quickly. Yes. Don't we have to go to Vivienda, or should I go first? No, that's not it, Professor. Didn't you just say that you are going to stop hunting protagonists for the time being? Why are you bringing that topic now? UC Autumn shook his head in frustration. After resolving the Hell Gate problem, I was going to dedicate the rest of my life to you. He had to use his own lifespan to travel between dimensions with someone, and he planned to bring Eric Kelly to Earth one day after collecting enough lifespans. I see. Arakella's cheeks blushed a bit at his words. She knew that her behavior was something which didn't go well with this situation, but it made her feel better without realizing it. Let's hurry, we should go before your world goes crazy. Yes, Araceli shouted and held UC Autumn's hand before casting the dimensional shift spell. As UC Autumn couldn't consume probability anymore, the place they would arrive would be different from each other, but it doesn't matter. After all, this time too, she would be able to continue breathing the same air with him. On the other hand, on Earth, Seol Yungyeon, the leader of Murim, stood on an empty field in the United States and looked up at the sky. Currently, Earth is in a very chaotic state. It was due to the fact that Hell Gate suddenly started becoming active. News from scientists who said they didn't know when it might explode was being reported one after another, and at the instigation of some irresponsible person, a lot of people bought several years' worth of food and put them in an air raid shelter. "My lord, what are you doing here? Are you taking a break?" Seol Yungyeon smiled at Shin Haeji's question. It was simply a scientific calculation that allowed humans to know that Hell Gate is expanding. However, for Seol Yungyeon, who had a keener sense than anyone else on Earth, it was different. When she closed her eyes, blocked her sense of hearing, and emptied her mind, she could feel it. In the distance, an ominous being was slowly trying to escape towards the Earth, but strangely, the Hell Gate itself was not hostile to Earth. It was like, it seems to be trying to have a conversation with Earth, or maybe it wants something else. "What the hell is that?" Startled. In an instant, Seol Yungyeon drew a sword and aimed at something. The time it took from her initial movement until that moment was at most 0.0075 seconds. In the direction where the sword was pointed, a certain man with gray skin stood. He was looking at Seol Yungyeon with a face devoid of any expression. "Is that animal the strongest creature on Earth?" "It's not an animal, it's human." "Is there any difference between the two? They have the same body of fragile skin and dangling bones." Behind the man stood a slightly short woman. She also had gray skin. They mumbled in their own language, thus Seol Yungyeon could not understand it. "They aren't human." Seol Yungyeon narrowed her eyes. She was aware of the existence of different races which come to Earth. Among them, there were people who wanted to learn martial arts from her, so she had to face them in person. However, the two otherworlders in front of her were different from other otherworlders she had encountered so far. She felt as if the two otherworlders were experts who had reached a higher level than herself. "No, they are weaker than me." So why did she feel that way? Anyway, doesn't it mean that if we give her the energy, she will become a protagonist? Yes. Humans are cumbersome. Why do they continue to live their lives like garbage which has not been chosen? Why are they satisfied with their current position even though, as it is, they are destined to be only extras for the rest of their life? Oh, she can't hear this, can't she? The beast cannot understand us. The gray-skinned woman slowly approached Seol Yungyeon. Her eyes were fully black. "Earth needs to be absorbed quickly, so please take care of us." As she said that, she tried to transfer some energy to Seol Yungyeon. "What?" As she stretched out her hand, her right arm was cut off. What? Why are you doing this? Huh? Calm down, it's just a simple cut." "Oh yeah." But the most disturbing thing for her beside her arm being cut off was the fact that she, as someone from perfect race, was unable to see the attack from such a lower species. Seol Yungyeon brushed the tip of her sword and sighed. "I don't know for sure, but I know that you are ignoring me." When she tried to recall the last time she was ignored, she couldn't clearly pinpoint it. But she knew that it was at the time when she had yet to ascend to the seat of Heavenly Demon. Therefore, she was quite upset by the two otherworlders who ignored her. "I can't just let you go now." Immediately after saying that, Seol Yungyeon danced. At that moment, the perfect race that came from Hell Gate witnessed the true meaning of perfect from her dance. Chapter 227. BTW, subscribe to our Patreon as this month and maybe next month is the last time you guys could do so. Thank you in advance. Beijing, China. Click, click, click. At the familiar yet boring sound of the camera shutters snapping, Taylor 9 barely managed to stop herself from falling asleep. Although she was someone who lived her life however she wanted, after joining another league, she refrained from doing things which could badly affect the guild. It's so boring. There really wasn't any reason for her to hold a press conference today. It was only held because an SSS-class gate had appeared in China, and Taylor 9 was dispatched to clear it as a Korean hunter. She originally did not want to do it but ultimately relented when Yekaterina suggested doing so to cement her identity as a Korean. Even though it has been quite some time since she changed her nationality to Korean, a lot of people still thought of her as Russian. Hunters with SS rank were still rare on the planet, so when she moved, all the headlines, whether it was in paper news or the internet, were all covered with her activities. With a chance for publicity showing up in front of them, there was no way the Chinese hunter industry would simply let it slip by. Therefore, they held a press conference for Taylor in a hurry. Next question. Since technology had advanced to the point a translator device could automatically translate over 99% of what people said, conversing in different languages was no longer hard. I said I have another question for you. I know, so please wait. Question: I heard you did a great job at this gate. Can we inquire what special training do Korean hunters go through? Hunters in China were excellent in both quality and quantity. It was to the point that there was a saying that they were second only to the United States. It had been that way for several decades. In other words, the question the reporter just asked was not a question someone from China would normally ask to hunters from Korea, which lacked both the quantity as well as quality of hunters compared to China. However, lately, the status of Korea in the world has risen quite a lot. Although the number of hunters in Korea was still small, they covered it with quality. The reason for their rise was clear. It was due to another league guild which Taylor 9 belonged to. Therefore, the reporters were all trying to dig information regarding their unique training method. If they found some clues, it would certainly be of great help to China. We tell them to eat and live well. Okay. Of course, Taylor didn't have any intention of telling them about their training methods. She even answered the question without batting an eye. When Taylor replied in such a casual manner, a lot of people's faces turned rigid. However, she didn't have any intention of inquiring about their moods. Question: why didn't Korean hunters salute toward the Chinese flag when the Chinese national anthem appeared? Out of a sudden, one particular reporter deliberately asked a nonsensical question. Hearing the question through the interpreter and through the translation device, Taylor's face instantly turned into looks of absurdity. What nonsense are you talking about, you crazy bastard? Miss Taylor, please calm down. But that bastard was the one who started taking SHT first. Hey, come here, or should I bring you here myself? The interpreter hurriedly spoke into the microphone. No comment, no comments. The reporter who asked that question already ran away, but there were still many reporters who had a strong mentality there. They all booed at Taylor as she grabbed her coat and tried to get out of his conference room. Boo! Return to your country. Ah, those bastards are really just. Most of the reporters instantly went silent when Taylor raised her fist to the air. It was due to the fact that once superhumans get angry, the entire area could turn into a wasteland as a result. Gotta admit, if she was still her old self, Taylor wouldn't even think twice of making a fuss here. However, ever since she became an SS rank, people's eyes changed when they looked at her. It was as if they were looking at a monster. Therefore, even Taylor couldn't help but be bothered by it since she didn't know what people would do if she made a ruckus. I'll let it slide today. As she said that, Taylor lowered her fist and was about to leave the conference room. However, at that moment, without any notice or signs, the ceiling of the room was torn away. Half of the people sitting in the conference room were swept away in the process. There wasn't even a noise. It could be said to be the quietest explosion in the world. Taylor hurriedly put a protective layer around her surroundings and pulled out her bat. What is happening? What the hell is going on? The people who managed to avoid the damage slowly raised their heads, and at that moment they could see it. A certain humanoid monster was entering the room through the ceiling. It resembled a human, but it had a strange energy different from that of a human. Its skin, eyes, hair, and everything also felt one step further than that of a human. So that woman is one of UC Autumn's close colleagues. The woman stroked her chin and muttered, but no one could understand what she said since she didn't use any language belonging to Earth. However, for Taylor, even if she didn't understand, she could easily infer the fact that the woman didn't like her. Hey, you guys, you didn't even thank me for saving your asses after saying so to the Chinese reporters. Taylor swung her baseball bat and slung it over her shoulder. It seems like it will be quite a close fight. Taylor thought that maybe the woman in the air could be stronger than her, but it also didn't seem like she was going to lose. After all, this is the M001 minor version built for testing. Be sure to wear it, please. Why? This is our first time producing a magic product, so a well-known star must use it first to promote it. But I don't know anything about magic. But you just need to press a button and say the keyword to activate it. It had been a long time since Taylor 9's equipment was completely replaced by parts from another league's technology. However, it was by no means a normal equipment since it was enchanted with powerful magic. Taylor then grinned as she imagined Yekaterina's elated face as she promoted the equipment. Let's start quickly, I want to test the equipment. Meanwhile, miles away from China, Yekaterina was also facing someone while floating in the air of another League's Guild hideout, Floating Garden. Otherworlder. From the moment Yekaterina met the creature's eyes, she had already guessed its identity. After all, it looked very similar to the Hell Gates creature that Yu Xiaodam had fought in Iran the other day. Not long ago, you went to the master of the Muram Alliance, didn't you? Is it my turn this time? The incident where Xiao Yungyun was fighting against two creatures from Hell Gate was featured on Breaking News a lot. They attacked the hideout of the new Muram Alliance but were able to escape with their life intact. How did they get into this place? Yekaterina frowned. It seems like since they think Xiao Yungyun Unnai is too strong, they are aiming for someone who is weaker. It was the conclusion Yekaterina drew after Taylor 9 informed the guild that she had been attacked through the guild's emergency contact. Xiao Yungyun, Taylor, and herself, there was only one thing all three had in common. They are looking for people related to Xiaodam. For what reason did the Otherworlders of Hell Gate approach Yu Xiaodam's colleagues? However, despite the question lingering in her mind, Yekaterina could already guess that their intentions would not be peaceful by any means. Also, as a former protagonist who had received the power of probability directly, she was able to estimate the energy contained in the body of the man in front of her. That man is definitely a protagonist. The strange man with gray skin and blue eyes in front of her was towering at a whopping 3 m tall and sharp steel-like wings spread behind his body. Her expression was cold without any change, but all in all, Yekaterina didn't even feel afraid of him. To think a lower species like you can touch dimension, you made a pretty nest. I don't know what you mean, but I know for sure that you can easily pass through it. Yekaterina answered in a calm voice, almost cheeky even. She knew that she was obviously weaker than the likes of Xiao Yungyun or Taylor. She wouldn't be able to defeat him like both of them. However, the place they were currently in was Yekaterina's space, a magician's space. Fireworks flew through the sky from all over the ground, wind blew viciously, the ground trembled, and pillars of water soared. It was all due to the spirits residing in the hideout which reacted according to Yekaterina's will. The next moment, light began to gather from the rooftops of all the buildings in the hanging garden before shooting to the sky and created a humongous magic circle in the sky. Even though I am still only at the level of a 5-circle magician, the amount of knowledge that Yekaterina had acquired from the library of White Witch inside Yu Xiaodam's imaginary world was unimaginable. With that knowledge, Yekaterina was at least on par with 7-circle magicians or even more. Although she couldn't cast those magics even if she poured all of her power, what if she borrowed the power of various tools, science, and technology in her prepared field? She would be able to wield the power of an archwizard. Even if I tolerate other things, I can't stand people who break into the guild hideout. As Yekaterina said that, her hands flashed. At the same time, a single line connects numerous constellations which embroidered the sky of the hanging garden. She activated a technique to cast magic through the celestial bodies as the source. So please just peacefully surrender. As long as the constellation still exists, Yekaterina's magic will never stop. Somewhere inside the Hell Gate, a man was sitting peacefully. The place he was currently at wasn't the terrible space that the hunters from previous expedition, including Yu Xiaodam, had suffered at. Instead, it was a really plain white space. He was sitting on an ordinary leather chair while typing into a normal-looking old computer. That's right, Earthlings there have superpowers, don't they? As he said that, the man took both of his hands off the keyboard, removed the glasses he was wearing and rubbed his eyes and massaged them. It was clear that the man was exhausted. Then, a creature resembling Yu Xiaodam appeared right before him. No matter how bad the environment, we, the perfect race, will not suffer. Perfect to you guys. When the woman with gray skin spoke, the man snorted at her. You guys are not perfect, Thinking you guys are perfect is just your own misunderstanding. Just what is perfect from that needlessly hard skin and not so beautiful skin color I can't understand. Seriously, I can't. What are you saying? Sorry, I guess you guys are the only species which was the closest to perfection compared to any other race which has ever existed, the man said as he glanced at the woman. His eyes looked the same as when she looked at the earthlings. Those were the eyes of someone looking down at beings lower than them. You guys are different from me, aren't you? When the man threw those words, the woman disappeared. No one knew where she went, she just simply disappeared. By the way, to think such problems will occur, the man mumbled as he moved and clicked the mouse. The time for them to absorb Earth had come, but it hadn't been done yet. However, he also couldn't pay any more attention to the matter as he had another pressing work he had to focus on right now. Let's see, has any new work been uploaded today? Damn it, this one is boring. This one has a shit ending. Wait, wouldn't it be better if the ending was shit? This one is good. The man nodded his head as he found a work called How to Survive in Fantasy, a novel uploaded by an anonymous writer to the internet. He then copied all of the content to his computer's text editor and clicked the upload button. It was a really simple and trivial act, but that trivial act of him would create a protagonist somewhere in the many dimensions. The man continued to scour through his computer and repeat the act of making protagonists. Considering that the average time it took for Audiobooks to hunt one protagonist was about 2 or 3 months, the pace of making protagonists was extremely fast. I have finished my work for today. The man stretched his back and picked up his teacup, which was no longer hot. When he looked out of the window, a completely twisted and grotesque interior of the Hell Gate was revealed. However, it was no longer completely twisted as it was before. It was slowly being finished. Perhaps some of those distorted spaces would be buildings, some would be roads, some would be intelligent bodies, and some would be beasts. A completed civilization in an unfinished world. In it, they were living like that without even realizing that the world they lived in was twisted. But sooner or later, the perfect world will be created. A world where no one is the main character, but at the same time anyone can be the main character. Waiting for that day to come, the man closed his eyes. He had a feeling that he was going to have a good dream today. Chapter 228. Far beneath the ground, a floating garden of spirits, there is a top-secret laboratory which could only be entered by a few scientific researchers and wizards trusted by Yekaterina. That place was filled with magic, science, and technology which Yekaterina had deemed to be either too dangerous to be exposed or too early for the public to know. Currently, there were 5 people gathered in that very room. It was Taylor, Seol Jungyun, Lakenthal, Smiling Shadow, and Yekaterina herself. Shadow, how's the cover-up story about these corpses progressing? We are saying that they are disappearing by themselves after death. So the media control is done. Yes, we made an announcement that it was the work of the anti-mage group who were dissatisfied by the existence of magicians. We also stated that we would respond positively. You did a great job. If they ask you about otherworlders, please avoid it as much as you can. I will do that. In addition to being stealthy, Smiling Shadow was very good at manipulating the scene of an incident, changing computer evidence or CCTV recordings, even disposing of the body without anyone noticing. It was all nothing for him. It hasn't happened yet, but if a situation arises in which another league has to get their hands dirty, Smiling Shadow's skills would play a pivotal role. Yekaterina took a deep breath and looked at the 4 preserved corpses in front of her. They were all unidentified otherworld races. All of them also had the same exact DNA as the one that Audiobooks had defeated back in Iran. Yekaterina thought of something which people would have thought at least once in their life at the moment. Why do humans have 5 fingers? What if there are more fingers? How about less? Wouldn't that be good? Why only 2 arms and 2 hands? Wouldn't it be nice to have more? Why do we not have any tail? Why don't we have wings when it's convenient to travel if we have one? Why? The human race is incomplete and weak. They have fragile skin which can be torn by even a piece of paper, and even just a small hole in the body could put their life at risk. However, the strange otherworlder in front of Yekaterina was different. They were perfect. No word other than perfect could ever describe them. There was not a single cell in their body which was useless. All the bones in their body had a reason for their existence, and their skin and other organs were so strong. It was to the point that they could survive in any extreme environment. Looking at how perfect they were, Yekaterina assumed that they must have been born with the strength of at least an A rank or higher. No race would have dared to use the word perfect unless they were dragon, the most supreme race. When Lacanthal, the only otherworlder amongst the five, opened his mouth, Taylor's gaze changed into that of curiosity. Dragon, do they really exist? They do, however, they are beyond the common sense of races like us. Sorry, didn't Lacanthal's race have the technology to move between dimensions? How can you say they are beyond even your race's common sense? We indeed have that technology. However, it was only possible because we had developed this particular field of magic technology to the limit. But dragons were creatures which were capable of dimensional movement and time travel from the moment they were born. I can't believe it. A dragon is simply a being like that. They can easily travel into another world through sheer willpower. They can go back in time whenever they want, and they can even create new races and worlds. To think such a nonsensical existence exists, Yekaterina swallowed her saliva. She herself had the blood of a different race called witch running through her veins. It was an outstanding race which could be called the evolution of humans. Without any cumbersome emotions, their thought process was concise and quick. However, even for them who were born with magic, it was almost impossible to travel between dimensions. Well, dragons don't show up all the time. On the contrary, if a dragon appeared in a particular world, it could be said that that world is ruined. Why is that? When a dragon comes, it means that an event which could not be resolved had occurred in that world. For example, destruction of the world, Lacanthal said in a somber tone while meeting Yekaterina's gaze. When Yekaterina, Taylor, as well as Xiao Yungyun lost their words, Lacanthal smiled. You guys took my nonsense too seriously. Anyway, from that point of view, these races are not perfect. Why is that? Look at that anatomical data. Even though they look perfect at the first glance, all the shortcomings of human beings in their body have been forcefully fixed. Let's say it like this: if you humans are old pots with holes in them, then these guys are the same old pots but only with the holes being patched with anything nearby with which they could cover the hole. When Yekaterina thought about it more, she realized that Lacanthal's words were indeed true. The otherworlders' corpses in front of her were simply another version of a human whose flawed body parts that everyone thought were imperfect, inconvenient, or lacking were perfectly fixed. That's it, they were nothing more, nothing less. To conclude, these bizarre races are not naturally created nor divinely crafted. Lacanthal laughed. Then, are you saying that they were born by the hands of an intelligent creature like us? It should be the case. I don't think God would have created such a clumsy rag. A race which was close to perfection, but ended up being a defect because it was just a clumsy perfection. Who the hell created these races? Why are they so obsessed with being perfect? And most importantly, why did they come from the inside of the Hell Gate? Yekaterina frowned. Hell Gate, what kind of existence resides inside? What kind of technology and magic was used to create a new race that was close to perfection? In this situation where the more you know, the more you don't know, what should they do? Well, we have found out everything we could find out. By dissecting that body here, I don't think we'll get any more information. Then what should we do? Why are you asking me? Lacanthal shrugged. Isn't there someone who has a better understanding than me in this field, so we have to wait for him to come? At his words, Yekaterina nodded her head with a slightly dark expression. It had already been 3 months since Yu Xiaodam was dispatched to another world. When will you return? In the Vivienda continent, a world where magic had been developed to the limit, only one empire ruled the world. Magic exists solely for the sake of humanity. With Archmage Reinkel at the forefront, the early magic civilization developed explosively and became the foundation of the Vivienda Empire. Over time, it ruled over 10 continents, controlled over 1,000 aerial islands, colonized all 5 moons, and spread the magical civilization to other planets which were inhabited by fairies. At that point, under the sky or even above the sky, there was no race which did not use magic. It was the era where magic was used by everyone and was everyone's daily routine. Thanks to her ancestor, Archmage Reinkel, Araceli Reinkel was living in such a great generation. Everything was peaceful. She thought that there would be no more threat to her world since she had defeated the magician's natural enemies, demons. Even when she left her world, Vivienda Empire was still flourishing with its great magic civilization. However, magician detected. Eliminating the magician. Eliminate all magicians. A horrifying and eerie voice rang out from the gigantic mass of machinery that covered half the sky above Araceli. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed from the gigantic mass of machinery and hit the ground. The ground which was hit by it was instantly charred and overturned. Successfully eliminating the magician. We'll now return to HQ. After a while, the gigantic machine disappeared into the sky. It was only then Araceli realized that something strange had happened in her hometown. The moons Araceli closed and rubbed her eyes a few times to make sure she was not mistaken. After all, unlike what she remembered before, the 5 moons were now covered with some kind of bizarre machinery, and in that machine, a certain huge eye was rolling around as if watching the ground. It was not magic nor the technique of the demons. It was a technology which she might have thought of as something that only existed in fantasy novels if she never went to another world with Yu Xiaodam. The true identity of those technologies was science. However, no matter how hard she thought about it, it didn't make any sense, since in this world the existence of science was merely treated as a superstition. After all, it was a world where science did not exist in the first place. Why did this happen? In Midsummer Night of August 31, year 709 of Reinkel calendar, Araceli witnessed her hometown being destroyed by science. The moment I opened my eyes, the blue sky filled my vision. On a planet with an ozone layer, even if you stare at the sun with your bare eyes, your body is strong enough to not get affected by it. But nevertheless, it was always unpleasant to make eye contact with the sun as soon as you opened your eyes. By the way, ouch, this trip was bumpier than usual, wasn't it originally? We would have arrived the moment I closed my eyes and opened it again. It seems like it was due to the selection process of the most suitable place and time for hunting the protagonist. Is everything okay now? Yes, it is. However, I estimated that we have slightly deviated from the original time zone. Is that even possible? In order to move between dimensions, we have to consume probability to not only move time, but to also penetrate both dimensions. However, when we moved earlier, the amount of probability in your body was only enough to do one. Summarize, please. The probability you gained from hunting the last protagonist is only enough to move between dimensions, not moving through timeline. Okay. A panoramic view of a dazzling city fills my field of vision. Magical civilizations specialized in beauty, therefore a lot of colorful buildings floated in the sky as if it was a decoration. Around it, a huge flying vehicle passed through the air with an advertising hologram on its side. As an icing on the cake, fireworks of myriad colors were decorating the skies shot from a palace which was built upside down from the clouds. Fantastic scenery that could not have been imagined on a gray earth was now unfolding here. Is this a magic civilization? The world where magic had developed to its limit was in truth similar to art itself. How beautiful can it be? How can we make this world more beautiful? It was as if the people lived here thinking only about the beauty, not the magic. By the way, where's Araceli? Unfortunately, this time around, I couldn't move together with Araceli due to the probability, so we were separated just like usual. But for some reason, I couldn't feel Araceli's aura at all. It seems like she did not exist in this time zone. No, wait, what do you mean? Perhaps she arrived in her original time zone, which was in the future. Wait, that was totally unexpected. Well then, how far into the future did she go? Probably. The system thought about it for a while and then printed the current date right in front of me. August 31, year 597 of Reinkel calendar. As I read it, the system continued to answer my question in a subdued voice. She moves 100 years into the future. Since she was originally part of this world, she couldn't follow you through time. What, 100 years? That's 3 times more time than I've ever lived. Then how can we meet? My mind went blank. Chapter 229. Month 8, Day 31, Year 709 of Reinkel calendar. Araceli traversed through the lush forest while dodging dozens of strange mechanical sensors floating in the sky. All the forests in the Vivienda Empire were cultivated by magic, therefore, all trees and plants grew uniformly. Magician has been found, magician has been found. When the soccer ball-sized spheres flying in the dark sky above her started to emit red light, a huge machine appeared in the sky again and fired a laser from its laser gun towards her. Looking at the scene, even someone who wasn't capable of thinking well could infer. The machine is hunting magicians. As soon as the giant machine finished hunting the magician, it disappeared again into the darkness of the sky. Looking at the scene, Aracelo wondered where the hell the giant machine was hiding. Sigh. Araceli let her breath out as she stepped on the grass. However, at that moment, a sphere suddenly appeared above his head. Araceli held her breath once again and quickly hid under the tree, but belatedly she had a thought. Can I really hide from the machine that destroyed the magic civilization with just a tree? I have to hide my mana. However, she had covered her entire body with mana in the process of traveling to this dimension. On top of that, even though she had returned to her home dimension, her frozen 9 circle had not yet become usable again. Therefore, if she had to fight the machine in her current situation, she would inevitably lose. I have to run away. But where? Is there really a place to hide away from the gaze of those machines? I think it will be better if I secretly intercept the machine that comes close to me. With that in mind, Araceli channeled all the mana she could find in her body to her fingertips and slowly pointed to the strange machine which looked like a soccer ball floating some distance away from her. Now she only needs to let it fly, and it would annihilate the machine in front of her right away. At that moment, however, stop, please wait for a moment. Someone's voice reverberated in Araceli's head. She immediately drained the mana on her finger and moved to trace the one who talked in her head. Once she located them, she moved her head to where the sender was and she sent back a reply. Telepathy, are you a magician there? She could see someone draped in black outfit surrounded by a strange mana barrier watching her. What, how did you know my location? No, that's not important. Are you a magician? Yes, I am. Expected she really showed up here. The person muttered to herself, then she talked to Araceli again. But wait a minute, if you are a magician, why did you do that? Did you go crazy and suddenly want to die? Ring. As the person shouted, a slight headache assaulted Araceli. She frowned as she struggled to stay composed. What happens if I attack them? They'll immediately detect your mana, find you, and kill you. Those guys are connected to each other, so they will notice instantly if one of them disappears. That's close. Araceli let out a sigh of relief again. She didn't know that those objects were connected to each other. She was only a step away from being in great danger. First of all, come this way. Since I have found out that you're a magician, I have the obligation to save you. Okay, Araceli said as she slowly approached the grass where the mysterious magician was hiding. This way, quickly. When Araceli walked closely, a woman draped in black rag grabbed onto Araceli's arm and pulled her into her own arms. With this electromagnetic shielding cloak, your mana will not be detected by them. Electromagnetic. That's right, you know about it, right? Although Araceli had heard as well as seen a lot about science and technology as she traveled to many worlds with Siadam, she still didn't know about the details. It's still a study which felt foreign to her. I don't know about it. What kind of world did you live in until now? Why do you have no sense of crises, and why aren't you wearing clothes? Araceli wondered what she should say at that moment, but then she remembered the knowledge she got from her professor every time they moved to a new world. I lost my memory. It was to lie first, think about it later. Even in a magical world which had been occupied by science fiction, the magicians still somehow found a way to survive. While walking through a secret tunnel located deep underground, Araceli had a conversation with a wizard woman who was leading the way. Your name is? Araceli. Araceli, what a common name, the only difference will be the surname. I am Shuel, a magician of the 5th circle. You? It's the 3rd circle. How old are you now? Well, 17. To already reach that stage at such a young age, you are amazing. However, unlike other people who would either get arrogant or get embarrassed after being praised like that, Araceli was calm. It was due to the fact that she had heard it at least 1,000,000 times back in the academy. Then why did you try to do such a reckless thing earlier? I didn't really understand the situation because I had no memory. Then what about your parents? They're not here anymore. Did you say you don't have memory? How come you know that? Hey. Hugh, okay, I'll let it pass for now. After all, that person said to bring you to her. That person who? No, in the first place, it has only been a few hours since she returned to this world, so who told her to bring her? And the fact that you did not respond to the sensor installed at the entrance means you are not an android. Android. It was a word used by UC Autumn back when they were in outer space. Did he say that an android was a human made of machines? Even the existence of a machine alone was nothing but a vague concept for Araceli. That's why the existence of a human made of machines was more difficult for her to imagine. Can I ask you something? How the hell did the world become like this? You really don't know anything, huh? For now, follow me. There is someone you must meet first. The tunnel they traversed was long and dark. It was a maze-like structure reminiscent of an ant tunnel. Some spaces were wide, some were cramped, and some were closed, but they had something in common. It was the presence of humans in every space. They were a mixture of people who could and could not use magic. All of them wore ragged clothes and were also famished, as it could be seen by how they couldn't even eat properly. However, they still had smiles plastered on their faces even though they were forced to live this way. Come this way. As Araceli followed Shuel and went into the deepest part of the tunnel, she instantly noticed that the gaze of people who were there was different from people in the previous room. They looked exhausted, as if they'd been stressed out, but their bloody, vigilant eyes said that they would jump straight into fight if the need ever arose. They are the warriors who protect this place. Probably they are battle magicians who have mastered magic to the limit. It's the biggest room in the tunnel. You can't even see the ceiling right. Wow. The place they finally arrived at was a gigantic city located in an underground cave. The buildings around were not bad, and it was clear that it was a city which used to be a coal mining city. Under the ceiling that stretched out to the sky, dozens of holes were drilled in the walls of the cave, and dozens of coal mine rails were entangled like spider webs. And at the center of the coal mine, there was a tall tower. What is that? That is where the Savior lives. She lived at the top of that tower, a place which was closest the ground above in this entire coal mine. No, not that Araceli pointed just above the tower, a place where whitish mist kept glimmering at a constant pace, and since Araceli was a dimensional wanderer, she could recognize it at once. That the dimension itself looks like it's vibrating. To recognize that fact after only a glance, the more I look at you, the more I find you amazing. Shuel looked at Araceli curiously, but she didn't ask any more. That is our hope. You can think of it as a kind of rescue signal. Oh, a rescue signal? To whom are you sending it to? Shuel shut her mouth and looked around her. The splendid magic civilization had long since disappeared into the column of history. All that remains now are those who lived with a little hope for the future. Do you know why hope is called hope? It is because even though the chance of it happening is small, people are still hanging on to it. Shuel sighed. About 200 years ago, there was one hero. A hero? Yes, she saved our world that was about to fall apart, and when peace finally came, she suddenly disappeared into the shadows of the world. Wow, who is she? Her name is Araceli Reinkel. Yes. I didn't call you. I was talking about the greatest magician in history, Araceli Reinkel, a hero who saved the world from the demons 200 years ago. Having said that, Shuel then looked at Araceli and smiled playfully. Since then, more and more people have been using the name Araceli. Your parents must have liked her too. Of course. Anyway, my thoughts are that she just slept for a while. She will return someday and set us free from the world of machines, just like how she freed us from the grasp of demons. And then Shuel went silent. On the other hand, Araceli bowed her head. Haha, that's a silly idea, isn't it? That moment, Araceli remembered the machine that filled the night sky. Sooner or later, she will fully regain her original power of the ninth circle, but that doesn't mean she will be able to destroy those machines with her own strength. Obviously, the ninth circle was similar to godly power, but it was far from enough to deal with the already completed core of machines. On top of it, they were an ill match for Araceli as they were pros at hunting magicians while she, on the other hand, was ignorant to science. "I can't save this world again." Shuel said what she was thinking when he saw Araceli's crestfallen expression. "Don't worry, it's not like we're only relying on that hope. We have another way." "Another how?" Before Araceli could get the answer to her question, Shuel, who walked in front of her, stopped. They had finally arrived at the tall tower located in the center of the coal mine. Many wizards stood guard at the entrance, but when they saw Shuel, their expressions relaxed. "Is that child the child the Savior spoke of?" "That's right, I found her in the forest as expected." "Will she be able to do it, though I don't see anything exceptional except for her beauty?" "Well, I don't know, that person had never been wrong though." Passing by the battle wizard standing on the entrance of the tower, Araceli entered the tower and quickly poured a little mana to explore the surroundings. Ordinary but thorough. The interior view of the tower was ordinary. It was built just like a lighthouse, but thorough protection magic was installed all over it. "The person you will meet from now on is our savior and our real hope, so be polite." "Absolutely, I had a moral score of 100. Araceli said those words playfully to relieve her tension, and Shuel looked at her for a moment before taking a deep breath and then knocking in the air. "Savior, I brought the child. How many times have I told you not to call me that? Sigh, bring her in." Eventually, a solid line of light flew into the air and the space split open, revealing what was inside. "I can't go in." Shuel said so and backed away, and Araceli nodded his head once and stepped inside. And inside, Araceli could see a familiar woman with bright purple eyes and moonlight-like hair dangling down to her waist. Araceli's pupils shook. After all, the woman she was currently looking at was someone she had met in a different world and different time. Empress Sahar Serenity. Correct. She was someone Araceli thought she would never meet again. "It's been a while, Araceli." The woman who was once a regressor, a saintess, a duchess, and an emperor greeted Araceli with a beautiful smile that melted her soul. Chapter 230. The time Araceli spent in the different world was different from Yu Siatam. While it didn't take long for Yu Siatam to travel from one world to another, Araceli could only move to another world years after Yu Siatam disappeared. And so, it could be said that her last meeting with Princess Sahar was ages ago. So it was only natural for her to be surprised when she met her after such a long time. But before she could dwell into the nostalgia of meeting an old friend, her curiosity took over. Can you tell me what method you used to travel between dimensions?" she asked. You are still the same, as curious as ever." Empress Sahar got up slowly from her seat and walked towards the window. Although it was clearly a tower located in a coal mine, different spaces were projected through the windows. It was as if it was a CCTV screen. Some windows displayed the seashore, some the cliffs, some the ruined city, and some showed the night sky full of machines. She caught the view of the destroyed world in her purple eyes. "Aren't you the one who told me?" "Pardon. To work hard all my life in order to meet that man again." It was then that Araceli realized what she had told Sahar. "So I worked really hard. Fortunately, I realized that, as a saintess who worshipped the goddess of time and seasons, I have already experienced going back in time twice." "Then, as expected, did you travel using the power of faith?" At Araceli's words, Sahar burst out laughing. "No way, amongst all the hard work I put in, I worked extra hard trying to understand divine power and faith as logically as possible." "Logically?" "That's right, I tried to logically understand how Goddess Kater sent me back in time, and whether there was a being higher than the goddess. In other words, on what kind of principle does the divine power work?" There was not a single person who had succeeded in analyzing God scientifically or even magically. It would still be the case even if you looked at any dimension. However, there were a huge number of philosophers and priests who tried to dig into the cause and truth of the manifestation of that divine power. Why do I believe in them? In what ways do they give me strength? And how do they affect the world? Sahar Serenity studied it all. Holy Scriptures, faith, God. Turns out it wasn't like that. The existence of divine beings, or rather, those who exist in a higher dimension than humans and granted power to humans who lived in a three-dimensional world, was what Sahar was actually studying. In order to answer the why, it was necessary to understand the entire process involved. I had to approach what I thought of as fantasy from an academic point of view, and I realized that the power of faith which I had received and used without cost was actually no different from magic. And the very day when she came to understand such a simple yet incomprehensible truth, I lost all my divine powers. Pardon. The moment I uncovered the identity of the divine power used by the gods, the moment I realized the truth behind the existence of the divine power which was stronger than anything else, and the moment I understood its essence, I lost it all. In other words, she could no longer receive divine power by believing in God. Sahar spread her palm, then on top of her palm, a subtle divine power shone. Now I use divine power in a pretty logical and rational way, just like how magicians use magic. The divine power contains the power to manipulate time and space. That's right, thanks to that I was able to travel through space and time. It was truly a mysterious and beautiful experience. I felt like I knew a little bit about that man's life that I had never been able to understand. It was interesting and quite enjoyable. But a problem arose. I tried to pursue him, but I had no idea where he came from. Arakeli received a bullet from Siadam, therefore, she was able to track his trace down using it. But Princess Sahar couldn't do that, as she has no such thing as Arakeli's bullet to be a hint. However, I still had hope. It's the energy of another world that you and that man scattered into my world. I tracked it again and again. As a result, Sahar pointed to the window. There, the terrible condition of the Vivienda Empire occupied by machines was shown. I reached your hometown. Arakeli looked out the window without saying a word. As she stared blankly at that mysterious window that transcended even space, complex emotions ran rampant in her heart. You once protected my world with that man. In order to repay that kindness, I also desperately tried to protect your world. Sahar gathered all the scattered magicians and built a fortress in the coal mine and covered it by distorting the space around to prevent the machines from finding it. But I don't have enough strength to stop them. On the window, a huge battleship was being shown flying through the sky. Then, hundreds or even thousands of humans appeared through it. No, looking closely, Arakeli realized that they weren't humans but androids, an existence with the looks of humans but were built with mechanical devices rather than flesh and bone. They shot missiles from their fingertips, fired lasers from their eyes and mouth, and held lightsabers which appeared from their own hands. They smashed through mana barriers and smashed the places where the wizards hid. Their power was simply overwhelming. At the very least, each of those androids have the power of a fifth circle or more. Sahar sighed. The commander level is even more powerful than that. Currently, the strongest magician in this world has barely crossed the seventh circle. Yet, the strength of someone like that can be found easily within their army. Therefore, when a war broke out, the magicians of Vivienda had no choice but to be defeated. When Arakeli was silent, Sahar forced a smile. It's not like there's no way at all, though. Do you have any other way to win the war? No, winning the war is simply impossible, but there is a way to bring this world back to the way it was before the war. Come to think of it, wasn't Princess Sahar a time traveler? Hope flashed in Arakeli's eyes for a moment, but it extinguished soon after. It was because, if she could have done that, why wouldn't she have done it already? Is there a reason why you haven't done it yet? There are two main reasons. Sahar takes a deep breath. The first time these things appeared was more than 100 years ago. Traveling back in time that far is not yet possible with my abilities. Just as Arakeli was unable to travel long distances to reach Earth, Sahar also had limits on her abilities. And the second reason is, they are also capable of time travel. It was like a bomb had been thrown. Arakeli almost collapsed to the floor due to her wobbling legs. Wait a minute, does that make sense? It seemed like it was an easy task for science. When I generated a time force field, the scientists in their ranks scanned it with a device called a computer and calculated it. They keep track of where I time traveled to change history. Nonsense. What is this power science? How can it rival the power of magic and faith alike? The computer solved what I had been thinking about all my life in just 1 second. We need billions of humans to think together at the same time to fight against their absurd computational speed. Nonsense. Even though my time travel can go back a week, or at most 10 days, they used overwhelming equipment to make a passage back to the 112 years ago. Oh wait, don't tell me that's why. Yeah, that's the case. Sahar's shoulders, who had always been held high, drooped at that moment. They have already changed the past once. They went back to 112 years ago and scattered a lot of advanced technologies there. The result of that is this current timeline where magicians are dominated by science. That was the horror of science and time travel. Despair ran through her body, and Araceli, unable to bear the pain, had no choice but to look at the floor and kneel with her head in both hands. She was silent for a long time. Neither Sahar nor Araceli opened their mouths anymore. Then, after a lot of time has passed, Araceli barely pulled her lips apart. Exactly when did this first happen? Princess Sahar reached above her and literally pulled out a book from thin air. There, history about how the Vivienda Empire changed into something like now was recorded. She opened the first page and read the first date written there. 31st day of the 8th month, year 597. It was the day when the world of magic ended, the day when science first broke out, and the beginning of how science would destroy magic. It all started then. Araceli swallowed her saliva. Didn't you say earlier it was impossible to send someone to 112 years ago? That's right. Then why don't we just send a consciousness? If it was only consciousness, it would be possible. You might be able to have a conversation with someone in the past, but that still won't resolve the problem. What can you do with just your consciousness? I can do something. Araceli closed her eyes and focused. Although she had traveled the dimension with him, somehow his aura couldn't be felt at all. However, she had experienced the same situation before. Did you know that Professor can also time travel? That man can time travel. Yes, if Professor had arrived on that day 112 years ago. Sahar and Araceli's gazes collided. Maybe returning the world to how it normally is. It may really be possible. Day 31, month 8, year 597 of Reinkel calendar. Buy lamb skewers, buy lamb skewers with plenty of furbin sauce. The fish skewers are delicious, tasty, come and buy. No matter where you go, there is always a fantastically built city, and there is always something behind it. I explored the back streets with a bunch of lamb skewers in my hands. It's a place where the lower classes of the citizens of the empire who received little benefit from magic lived. I don't think there is much difference between this and old neighborhoods in our country. No matter how much magic develops, in the end, the benefits would not spread far enough to the lower classes. By the way, how long do you plan on eating those skewers? Didn't you say that it was a preliminary exploration? Do you need that many skewers for a preliminary exploration? Of course. Just say you like lamb skewers. Ha 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 ha, it's very nice here. They even sell lamb skewers on the street. Well, it's not because I like lamb skewers that I am neglecting my research. I was just walking around the market street and had nothing on hand, so I got bored and just decided to buy lamb skewers. By the way, since we arrived here, far away from the timeline in which Araceli is, wouldn't there be a reason? That's right. It was due to the fact that right here, right now, I had the highest chance of hunting the protagonist, which means the protagonist must be somewhere nearby. What was the plot? They'll show you. The magical world ruled by science. Hashtag sci-fi fantasy. Hashtag tyrannical. Hashtag monopoly. Hashtag development. Hashtag conquest. Synopsis. One day, a piece of paper accidentally fell. It contained amazing power, but it was not magic. The sad life of the lower classes who were ignored and persecuted for not being able to use magic. From now on, I will pay you back with science. From the title and introduction, it's clear that the protagonist was bloody violent, since I think I've never seen tyrannical tags until now. By the way, what's with that weird tag? I don't know either. I was going to take a closer look at it, but suddenly I felt something ominous behind me and turned around. The feeling came from deep within the alley. As I walked there, I could see someone in that dark alley filled with only piles of garbage and the sound of a meowing cat. There's someone. Even if I'm being loud, no one can hear me. Ignoring the system's words, I hid behind the wall, and the identity of that someone was revealed. Protagonist Fior. It was a little child. At most, he was just 8 years old. He was dressed in ragged clothes and his body was riddled with scars from being beaten by someone, and beside him there was someone else. What is that? When I looked closely, it was an awkward thing to call it someone. It was in the form of a man, but it was a machine. In other words, a humanoid machine. Android. That very thing which was the furthest from the setting of magical worlds was passing something to the kid. It was clear that the scene in front of me could be considered as the prologue. I have to stop it. As soon as I had that thought, I ran into the alley, pulled out a pistol from my pocket, and was about to shoot the kid. At that moment, the kid raised his head and looked at me. Hi. For a moment, I stopped. It was only for a very fleeting moment, but Fiolin's face, the protagonist of Vivienda Academy, overlapped with the little boy's face for a moment. It wasn't an illusion, because I could vividly feel his existence. However, his face disappeared in an instant, and the face returned to the face of the bloody little boy. Protagonist Partelian. Who are you? The moment the little boy's frightened voice came out, an android stepped in front of him. Discovery of risk factors. I will rule out the irregular. Damn it. Android's technological prowess was clearly far ahead of Earth's science, but I had no desire to lose here. I have to kill the kid and get rid of him no matter what. At that moment, Professor, no, if you kill that kid now, a paradox will occur. Hi. A familiar voice echoed in my head. It was Arakella's voice. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. Have a suggestion? Let me know in the comments.